Thank you for being here to start with. I'm Nathalie Bontemps. I'm the editor of Communicate magazine and website. We are here today to have a panel discussion about to plan or not to plan. So this is a very Shakespearean title for a very Shakespearean situation whereby we can actually, I forgot, sorry. Here you go, much better. So how many of you had to completely scrap everything that they had planned for holidays or work or budget or innovation in 2020? I'm just curious. I can't believe that some of you didn't have to do that. I don't know who managed to avoid this situation. Well, but basically, the conversation we're going to have today is to see how to manage a situation where unpredictability is a rule. Is it the rule? This is one question that we'll be looking at as well. And see how to manage when your job is to plan, when you cannot technically do it. So this is the conversation that we're going to have. So here we have Dewald. I'm sorry, here you go. I'm going to Duplooy. Am I saying it right?
You're saying it 90%.
90%.
Yeah. Not even my parents can pronounce my name. So,
okay, I'll take it.
My Starbucks name is David, so anybody you can call me David.
Okay, so Dewald is marketing director KFC MENA at Yum Restaurant International. Then we have Sevgi Gur. Okay, 90%. Good average. She's vice president of marketing at OSN. And we have Asih Wulansari.
Good timing.
Coming in like a star. Vice President Marketing Strategy at Mashreq Bank. Thank you all for being here. Now, I'm going to ask you the question that I asked the audience. How did you have to scrap basically everything that you had to do, that you had planned for 2020 and rearrange everything when the pandemic hit? Did you? All of you?
Personally, absolutely.
Personally?
We planned a whole bunch
more
of
business-wise
stuff, and none of it happened. So I had to deal with it. Business-wise as well. I don't know who remembers the first 3 days when the lockdown came, right?
Yeah.
I think it was March 13 to 15. In fact, I know it was March 13 to 15.
How do you remember that? I mean, everything is a blur.
It's a bit of a blur. I had to go look back and go, when were the first 3 days again?
And we're still in March, as far as I'm concerned.
Who knew there was going to be a global pandemic hitting and it's going to be full lockdown? So those first 3 days I remember quite vividly.
What about you? Do you remember the first 3 days?
I mean, not just the first 3 days. I would say, like what you said, it was really a blur because I think everyone had to react very, very fast. But I think what was important at that time was to remain calm and confident about the situation. Of course, you don't know what will happen, but it is very important to remain flexible, take decision very, very quickly, and try to manage the situation. And I think what has happened during that time was a shift that was not just related to the brands, but also for the consumers, because consumers, they were also adapting digital, massively, and it gave us a lot of opportunity to understand and react.
Okay, we're going to get into what to do. Now, I'm just trying to get a sense of what was the mindset when all things froze, basically. Sevgi, what about you? How prepared were you when everything started, and how did you adjust?
I generally have a very optimistic view of life. When it just started and everyone was having this this will be a disaster, I just had a more positive view. Mm-hmm. So it will be only 2-3 months, everything will be okay. So I continued to plan my trips and everything was okay from my side. And after 2-3 months, I came to realization this will stay a little bit longer. And then, to be honest, when I look at back, when you ask this question, all my life changed. I changed my company, I changed my home. Professionally, I changed my perspective in most of the things I used to believe in. And when I look at now, I think everything was in a good way. So it was a huge change, but I think it made us better.
Really, that's an
assuming,
interesting
so,
perspective.
yeah.
Do you guys agree that it was actually the outcome is for the better?
I think there's an interesting shift, and I cannot say, of course, it's not better for a lot of people. I mean, things happen, but I think as a marketeer, it forces you to change for the better.
What about you, Dewald?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of sad stories around us, so I'm very conscious of that. A lot of people went through a lot of tough times personally, and a lot of businesses struggled a lot. So I'm very conscious of that. But I like your attitude of being, just have a positive view on it. I think before this, you asked us, what's creativity going to be like? And I think there's going to be some phenomenal stuff coming. So I like that view. I buy into that. Take the storm that we're still in, kind of, and get the most positive out of it. So I'm conscious of all the tough stuff that happened to a lot of people, and I think we need to have empathy with that. But at the same time, have a real positive attitude of what's to come.
Who in the audience agrees that this can actually have a positive impact on us as people and the industry? It's interesting. You see the reflection, like the thinking is being processed and hands are going up. So why is it a positive? If you'd like to explain.
Sure. So professionally speaking, I think that we finally were able to identify the brands that have a real purpose and the brands that are just clutter. And certain brands were able to stand tall during the pandemic. And sorry, thanks. And they were able to communicate with their audience and consumers, and they won a lot of consumers over. As for personally, I believe the humanity needed to take a break. We needed to disconnect a bit and look at what really matters in our lives and stop taking life for granted.
Interesting. Is this... who else? You raised your hand. Sorry, sir, I don't know the names of everybody. Who would like to comment on this?
Thank you. No, I think I echo the comments that I've heard so far. I think two parts of impact here. One of them, made us realize what really matters when it comes to effectiveness. We all worked from home for like number of months, so far. Didn't realize it had an impact on productivity, So we used to travel every week or so, to go to a different market in our region. We did it sitting at home, and we still managed to achieve the same results to a certain extent. At the same time, we thought about, for example, digital, and we had big plans into digital transformations that will go into 3-4 years, for example, in our markets / the divisions. We managed to do that transformation in 4 to 6 months. So did it have an impact? 100%. Was it to the positive? I fully agree with that. We like I said, as a result, we reduced all the unneeded spend, travel, and what have you, plugged it into more effective kind of level of advertising investments and advertising investment, and we were able to do that. On a personal matter, I would say that, without making myself look too old, but I've never spent as much time with my family as I spent in the last year and a half, So I guess it had a positive impact at the end.
That's for sure. Okay, so let me run a very quick poll again from the audience. How many of you think that unpredictability and uncertainty is going to be the norm from now on? Oh, you all think that we're going back to... Okay, no, it's again processing the... Excuse me?
No, I was just repeating the question.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right. So you think things are going back to being, to have more clarity?
It's not one or the other, though, right? Don't you think that as people, we've become more accepting of the uncertainty and we've figured life around that, right? Like how many times, at least it's happened with us, you're working from office and then you're working from home and then you're working from office. That's uncertainty, but it's no longer uncertain because you've figured out how to adapt to it?
That's a very good question, actually. Let me put it to our panel here. Do you think that actually uncertainty and unpredictability is a mindset that you can adjust?
I think in a sense, yes. I agree with the lady in the audience. Firstly, uncertainty is always there. It's always been there. I think we kind of forgot that there was a financial crisis in 08, 09, because this just blew up to be so enormous. Uncertainty is always there. I don't know what's going to happen when I drive from here to the office. So uncertainty is always there. You got to just get comfortable with that. I don't know who said it first, but calm seas do not make good sailors. So I think after this, I'm a pretty damn good sailor now. So yeah, I think uncertainty's always been there. What we learned through this massive crisis is this mindset to maybe deal with it better and not be so like a deer in the headlights when something happens. So
Wulan, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, things are always have been uncertain even before the pandemic hit, right? It's just because of the scale of COVID-19 and the impact. You kind of seen that more than whatever other things that has happened. But I think the idea is you always need to look ahead of you and see what are the things that might or might not happen. And the idea is just to be very, very flexible and ready to adapt. And I think the important thing here is it is interesting because it forces us marketeers to be like pretty much on your toes the whole time, and you have to keep on learning, and like you cannot really stop, because even post the pandemic, like we no longer need to wear our masks, but you think you can, just relax and follow your plan. It won't work that way.
Okay, but then again, some industries maybe are better fit to manage this uncertainty. I'm not sure that an industry like banking doesn't like uncertainty. We're talking television, where you are constantly evolving. Sevgi, my understanding is that basically you told me when we were preparing this panel something that shook me to my core. You don't plan.
Yeah.
And don't plan.
I'll change this statement a little bit to be politically correct now. Joke aside, I mean, coming to uncertainty, in my view, maybe uncertainty was there and it will be there, but the speed of change, I think that's the most important thing for me, changing compared to my early life in corporate life, and things were a little bit more stable, because the differences between generation, like the difference between my parents and myself, there are so many differences, but there are so many familiarities. But when now I went to a focus group with a Gen Z or millennial, I don't even understand. And I was having a conversation, the moment when I understand TikTok generation, I will, unlock a human truth in my mind. And as a professional, how you can be relevant, like as a marketeer, as a brand, how you can be relevant in that changing environment. So that's, for me, is very interesting. I couldn't even, in my mind, find a solution, because you still need to little bit plan when you launch a product, right? There is a time to market. And the moment you launch it, something becomes irrelevant, because I was reading Facebook annual review. They are not even talking about Facebook anymore. They are only talking about virtual reality. And if you think about it, Facebook is there for 10, 15 years, and now it is irrelevant to the new generation, and they are just trying to build the future. So change and how you stay relevant, I think this will be the biggest challenge for companies, but also for marketeers. And my industry, coming to the planning, of course, media is impacted immediately from the change in the consumer desires. So they like something, they watch it. They don't like, they stop watching it. And that's why, of course, we plan, but we also need to plan in a mindset that we might need to change it tomorrow.
I agree with Sevgi. The pace is different. So you said the speed changed. I 100% agree with that. There's no new normal. Things are always uncertain, but the pace is now fast. Somebody said it here. Something that you thought you can only do in a year. You suddenly do it in 4 months. Yeah. We've realized, hey, we're going to work way faster. So yeah, the pace is different.
Well, actually, I'm just wondering if we kind of took for granted the stability that we enjoyed. And you mentioned 2008, and that's not so long, but our memory doesn't go that far anymore. Thank you, mobile phones and social media. But the pace of things is so quick that we tend to forget what happened now 13 years ago. And today, we are in a situation where we realize that stability is not something that can be taken for granted again. We might forget in the next 10 years and then be reminded again. I don't know, I hope not. But in that case, if instability is the norm, how do you manage? Because we are still in a world that expects us to have plans. So how do you manage? Who wants to go first?
I can go first. I have a very simple...
You don't plan. You told me you don't
Yeah,
plan. So this is how you manage.
So I think sailing analogy, I just started sailing this weekend. And I think it's really a very good demonstration of real life. And the teacher was always saying, you need to aim for something. If you don't aim for something, you can't go anywhere and you just stay. But it's so dynamic, you need to change how you go to this place. And I think it's exactly what we need to do. You plan. You need to have a vision. As a company, we have vision. We have some commercial targets. But how we can go there should be very flexible. And we also discussed in the call, maybe it's not even having a B, C, D plan. It is just having a plan that you can every day look and be open to change it. So I think having that flexibility, and it's more mindset than, because technology will not do that for you. I think it's the people who are willing to change every day, challenge themselves mentally, physically, and be adapt to that change, because you fall in love with your plan. Right? It's like life, like, you know, when you plan, you think that you need to stick to the plan. And intuitively, this is what you want to do. I think the new habit that we need to have in professional life, okay, I have a plan, but I'm ready to change that plan. And that's the way to go, I guess.
Well, this is a day for sailing metaphors, clearly. I don't know if Wulan, you have one as well.
Not in terms of sailing metaphor, but I can add to what Sevgi mentioned.
Sure.
So, I mean, yeah, she mentioned about like plan versus non-planning. But see, at the end of the day, we all have like that long-term annual plan that you have to meet the target that is already set before the year even started, right?
Okay.
But in reality...
Hold this up, because this brings me... Who here has a one-year annual plan that works? You have more than a year, I think. So not everybody. Okay, so please continue. Yeah.
Okay, so probably I'm talking on behalf of half of us or a third of us.
Okay, no, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you look at it from a more holistic perspective, yes, you have that, like the things that you need to achieve. But in reality, at least from my perspective, I have to look at more of like a chopped down version of it, of a, say, a 1-month plan. And not just that, like it's a 1-month plan as well as the set objectives within that, and then even chop it down further to weekly. And oftentimes I do assess things daily, because during these times, and for a lot of us, we might be doing more and more of digital versus offline. You are able to tweak things at real time, and this is the beauty of it. You can learn and optimize and tweak things at your convenience, and you can test it on a smaller basis. Yes, of course, mistakes will happen along the way, but this is, again, that's how we learn, how we optimize, and how we tweak along the way.
So let me see if I get this right, because basically you're saying kind of the same thing, that you have a long-term objective, a year or maybe more, but then you keep adjusting and adjusting on a shorter time span and adjusting constantly. Now, this might be doable in your fields, but how do you adjust the plan for a sandwich?
It might be. It's a little bit harder, yeah, because there's things like supply chain, and you know, in fact, there's a million things.
This is not digital. We're talking about. Yeah.
So 2 things. So you know, we have a phenomenal digital side to our business, so there we can be as agile as possible. Which is why we will never stop planning. There's always a vision. The vision often doesn't change. The vision is the vision. We want to get to X. Sometimes the path to that, and that's where the agility comes in. So there is you spoke about a 1 month ahead plan. So yeah, we look and review almost on a daily basis. Data is king. The consumer data makes it even bigger. So staying close to those elements will make you be agile. Now, how do you? Your specific question was how do you change a plan on a sandwich? It's quite a granular question. But if something at that moment doesn't fit, then we need to have the freedom with responsibility, which I'm very grateful for. We have a culture that allows that, so that there's no fear. No fear of a mistake there. That if you need to stop it on the dot, because that's not what the consumer wants now, because of a global crisis or whatever the case may be, then we make the decision.
So what you're
so
saying
we can sacrifice to make a call on the spot. But it's I think not having the sandwich planned in the first place will put us in a slightly worse position.
So yeah, but in that case, what you're saying is that the change, the transformation that the organization goes through is not only in terms of how to plan, even if actually, from what you're saying, you're actually planning more.
Correct.
You're planning more on a different time frame, but it's also a change in mindset, because it means accepting to do this in a different way, and accepting that you might need to scrap things, and it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, one more point. Sevgi said you fall in love with your plan. I love that. Because what happens is, and I think this is one of my big learnings, which I was going to mention at the end, but check your ego at the door, because stuff changes. So the moment that our personal egos and our corporate egos get so big that we're so in love with that plan, but now things have changed, that's where the agility comes in. So, check it at the door
we've all been there. There's an emotional investment when you plan something and you have a vision for something, and that's quite hard to let go, right? I mean, is this a feeling that is being shared here, that sometimes you have this idea that this is going to happen in 6 months and you just fall in love with the idea? I mean, it's human, right? Who here just look at things very, very coldly and doesn't feel this kind of emotional? This gentleman here is like, no, not me, clearly. So the transformation is not only in terms of processes and tools and the way to do things, is how we feel, how we engage with what we do, and how we think. The mindset is key. So okay. Fair enough. How do you? I mean, you're all heads of marketing, so you lead this. You give the impulse to your teams. But how do you make sure that it trickles down enough so that people learn this kind of mental gymnastics? I would say. How do you do it?
Well, okay. There's no such things as over communicating.
Okay.
When it comes to not just planning, but executing, right? Because you cannot assume that everyone would understand the vision, everyone would understand what we are going to do to achieve that. So over-communicating is very, very important to your team. And beyond that, they will also talk to the different stakeholders, within the company, to the different stakeholders that help us to plan things and to achieve our goals, like the agencies and everything. So we all need to be on the same page, and there's not much time for gaps. Like, we need to make sure that we are on the same page at all times. So I would say, like, over-communicating is very important.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that's very true. During the time of crisis, even a personal relationship, if you stop communicating and over-communicating, it creates a big distance. That's one thing. The other one, recently, I think the problem at the moment, corporations are not structurally ready to maybe plan in a very short period of time. And we started trying to use technology more. We adopted some, for example, applications where even for a particular project, people just put their comments, like it's like a chatbot, and we have an open communication there. So it's not only having meetings, because having meetings, in the distant environment. That's also difficult, and this way of communication should be in a way that it's very ongoing and at an operational level. Because, okay, we align on the vision, we align that things can change, we should be agile, that's perfect. But how do you do it, right, in the real time? That's the challenge. And most of the time, myself as well, I struggle at that level. Okay, I mentally comprehend the importance of that, but it's a behavior change you need to drive for yourself and for your team. I think here really technology plays a role for, at least for, in my case, with our team. For the projects, we need to be super agile and change the plans.
So project management platforms like
and
Slack
tools,
and things.
I start using these tools heavily for the last 1 year. It's a big change in my life. The second one is like having meetings, like chat sites, like, every day 10 minutes. It's not 1 hour meeting, but 10 minutes, let's come together, let's discuss what is the problem, let's solve it, and that kind of different way of organizing ourselves. I think this just started. And one thing we start doing, someone started in our team, we just reflect. It's sometimes like a therapy session, but some meetings we just take 10 minutes because some people struggle, right? For example, I don't mind changing, and I am not a big believer in planning anyway, but I mean, maybe I am an outlier in that sense. Some people really struggle to adopt this. What we do, 10 minutes, we just open our heart, and it really helps, and we don't judge, and we try to understand, we try to do a little bit hand-holding. I think this kind of techniques are really important, and spending time on these things in a time where you don't have physical contact, I think it really makes a difference.
So is it fair to say that actually 2020 can help planning better because it forced us, all of us, to adopt this kind of tools that actually facilitate collaboration, enhance planning and execution?
Yeah. It's, sorry, I just want to share an anecdote. So we have some agile people like having the training on this. They start the squads and all this stuff. And our CEO, at the beginning, what is this? This is nonsense. And recently, for an irrelevant, these squads are really working. Bring the squad team in. So I think it's also an opportunity, especially for people like little bit longer in the corporate life, also to learn. It closes the gap in a way because they try the things they didn't try in the past, and they see the benefits. So I always find it interesting, like this type of things open the new avenues for people in terms of thinking.
Okay, now I cannot not ask the audience who had to confront their boss on using this kind of platforms and trying to explain how it works, and your CEO not understanding. This is a situation. Is my boss here? No, he's not. I mean, definitely, this is something I have faced. I don't know about you guys. No? Nobody wants to say. I see you nodding, but very discreetly. Okay. All right. So, what other tools, Dewald or Wulan, do you have specific tools that you use, processes that you can share that you think help?
Yeah, I think tools is a very linear way to put it. So, every company will have very specific tools because, as I said, it's a very linear word for that. And I think a lot goes back to what the ladies have spoken about in terms of communication and culture. So I'm very blessed that in our company, it's a very heart-led culture, and that means it's very easy for comms to flow up, down, sideways. Because there's so much empathy and so heart-led, this makes the process significantly easier. It takes fear out of space. So if you want to call it a tool or a process, then it's take fear out of the way for everybody in the team. Then they will have that freedom with responsibility to make a decision or to come to the table with a decision or with an idea. So what this then cultivates is you getting the most phenomenal ideas from the people you least expected it from, because that just opened it up. It's one of the beautiful things that came out of this crisis. But for that, you need to have a really strong set culture. So it depends. If you're a startup, then beautiful, because then you can instill it. If it's a big corporate, it's a big ship to change. So I'm very lucky that culture is really ingrained in our system. So it's still planning, as I said, but the freedom to be agile. So nobody fears a mistake, honestly. And in this tough time where changes happen so quickly, that's unique to have. To remove the fear, have a very heart-led culture, and then the ability to make decisions really, really fast. And stuff will happen, and folks around you need to be okay with that. And the moment that lands, then then things get calm a little bit, and we move forward beautifully. So it's there's tools. Obviously, you talked about tech. So tech opened up our life and getting consumer data like this. In the past it was a focus group. Set it up. Now tech gives us that like this. So that's a tool. In terms of a process, and I think it runs much deeper, is having that culture that allows that freedom without the fear.
Interesting. But because what you're saying is that basically this mindset, this approach to the vision, the plan, strategy, is quite liberating to approach it that way instead of the very almost Soviet-like, 5 years, 15 years plan, whereby any change to the plan used to require the approval of the C-suite, the higher-ups, etc. And so it was very slow and very heavy to move around. So how does it work in terms of decision-making process in that case? Wulan, I don't know if if you're enjoying the same agility in your organization, but
well, I think the landscape, even when it comes to financial industries, it's changing. It has been changing the past few years, and yes, last year was probably the highest level of adoption for a lot of us within the same landscape. I'll add to what Dewald was saying about agility. So yes, you have the methodology of being agile, but at the end of the day, you cannot teach someone to be agile. Like, it is a mindset. Like, they need to embrace it. And the moment you are able to move with your team in that same direction, it just helps you to reach the same goal faster. And the second thing, I mean, just to add, because I like what he said, psychological safety really matters. See, right now there are a lot of noise. With tech, it's very easy for everyone to say things. You still have like some people in the team who might not be able to voice things from the very beginning, but they might have thought things through, and you want to capture that, especially when things are changing all the time. You want to get the best minds, to help you in the process. So for psychological safety is very important. You need to be empathetic. Like, you need to check in. Yes, we do, for example, like 10 to 15 minutes huddle, but first 1 minute, guys, how are you guys doing? Like,
keep it human.
Correct, exactly.
Okay, I'm not sure. Do you agree that agility is not something that can be learned?
I think it can be learned, like everything. But I think it's...
but it's a mindset. It's not a skill, for sure.
There should be a commitment from the person that is needed. It's like therapy. Like, if you are not ready to get the help, you will not get the help. My experience, I'm working in a company, we have two, because OSN being an old free-to-pay air, and now we are trying to be digital. Of course, we have both worlds. In a good way, it's a transformation challenge. But sometimes, of course, when you have some habits that you just do same thing, same way, 10, 15 years, you need to be open to change. And I think this is what you are referring. The person needs to be ready to be agile. And when you are agile, it's more difficult than not to be agile. So there is a difficulty involved. So in that sense, it can be taught, but there should be an organizational and personal maturity to do so. And I think most companies are struggling. My background is Unilever. I talk to my colleagues, ex-colleagues there. It's such a huge company, 200 years of doing the things in a certain way. How do you change that, right? Like, okay, again, understanding the challenge is one thing, and changing your muscles, they are so strong, they are so big. It's a challenge, and it boils down to the individual. Are we ready to do that? Because it will be very difficult to do that. And so what is in it for me? How it will work for me? Why would I change after 20, 15 years? So these are the big questions that we need to answer as leaders, as companies. I think that's the challenge. But when it comes to decision making, I also want to share something. we always talk about change and adaptability. It's also very important to define what are the things you want to stick. Because my challenge at the moment, because of the uncertainty and because of the pressure, sometimes I feel, especially senior people, okay, we try something, it is not working, let's change it. That's not also the agile way of thinking. You need to pick the things that you want to stick, especially as a brand. I always tell, what brand says it should be there. Your brand promise is not going to change because of COVID, right? You need to stick the values of your brand. You need to stick to certain things that makes you different. And trying to change this, I think, is fundamentally also something wrong. And that's very important. We need to be quick in decision making, but we need to be giving enough time before making big changes in our thinking. No, this is an interesting challenge sometimes I face.
Agility doesn't mean
changing everything.
Changing everything all the time.
I absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, but with to go back to the idea of plan and strategy and objectives, where you say objectives, usually the next idea is KPIs. How do you measure these objectives? So how does this work if you are changing the objectives? Do you constantly adjust the KPIs? Because again, for people, for the teams, it's kind of, they feel they are being measured based on that. So if this constant flow of change, how do you manage it in terms of measuring the results?
I think the KPI is the KPI. So at least in our world, there's a KPI set. We're in a corporate structure, right? So the KPI is set for the end of the year, end of the financial year. That stands. That's still the way to get there might pivot, but that stands. And as long as your team, that's where a hot-led culture gets so important. As long as the team understands that the decisions that we make is to better get to said KPI, then there's buy-in. But if there's a feeling that we're making the wrong decision, not going to get us to a KPI, because there's reward or not at the end of a KPI, that gets very personal. But the KPI is the KPI. It's set. It is what it is, and how we gun for it, that pivots, that changes a little bit. So I also buy into the previous point of there's a lot of longevity as well. That's why I mentioned earlier to check the ego, and sometimes the ego can also go, oh my goodness, I'm so agile, I'm changing. But there's things that sometimes, that's why in tennis you get a second serve, right? Stick. I like the idea of sticking, and there's some things that you do need to stick through with. But in our case, at least, the KPI is the KPI. Let's go get it. There's this way, there's this way, there's this way. We chose this path. Pandemic comes, so now we may need to do something different. But the KPI is the KPI.
What do you think, Wulan? Are you do you manage to adjust constantly? And the KPI is, as Dewald was saying, is stays. But then what is being adjusted then to reach this KPI?
Yeah. I mean, the KPI is there, and I think what was challenging, going back to 2020, what was challenging at that time was that the KPI was already set at the very beginning, right?
Correct.
But then things change, and okay, you still have that target, and you're trying to figure things out. So you're kind of exploring what will be the new ways to approach things. So it's about, I would say, revisiting the process and looking at it. Is it still the right way to achieve the KPIs that I want to meet? So it's not about changing the KPIs all the time, but it's about tweaking and enhancing the process as we go along.
Okay. So if I'm trying to recap a little bit of what you're saying. So basically, talk to your teams, over-communicate, that's what you mentioned. Change the mindset. The mindset is everything. So adjust, plan constantly, and replan, and adjust the plan, and review the plan. Use data to, is it correct to say, Dewald, you were saying that you use data all the time? So is this the crux of any plan today for you?
Look, there's beauty in gut feel as well, right? I'm sure if there's any creatives in the room, they might get a little bit agitated if I say data only. if you're a strong thinker, gut comes in, gut comes with experience. Some people have it better, some people not. But that's why, in the absence of superior logic, data always trumps, because data will give you the fact. And that's not only data like financial data, etc. It's data coming from the consumer. Tech gives us the ability to get that data faster, maybe dig a little bit deeper. Data stays king with the consumer at the head of it, depending what your industry is, obviously.
I don't think anyone now plans without it being database.
Yeah.
Anyone? I would imagine that everyone uses data. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yes,
It'll be an interesting conversation if somebody doesn't.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm asking. I'm kind of hoping somehow that someone would say, I don't. But no. Okay.
But now more than ever is what I would say. Now more than ever. And the beautiful thing is if you surround yourself with there's so many smart people that work with us. I mean, we spoke about it earlier. I'm super blessed with really smart people around me. That helps. It also helps in interpreting the data and your agencies, depending again on your industry. I mean, our media agency, Arts and Science, were all in with us. Like joined at the hip. And so when you have that, that beautiful. It's not a client and an agency anymore. It's a true partnership, properly joined at the hip. Then data flows, and you have interpretations of it, and you get new pieces of information, and they buy into using data as a North Star to move forward.
Interesting. Yeah, well, it's kind of, this is now the basis for everything. So, yeah, and the core of it is the mindset of not being afraid of change. A change, it's very reassuring when certainty is there, but because uncertainty is such a big word when you're talking about the business environment, it's volatile, it's uncertain, and usually it means it's bad. So is this something that even in the language is going to change to mean that uncertainty is not a synonym for bad anymore, do you think?
Uncertainty is always there. You need to embrace change. Yeah.
So why did we have this? The business environment is uncertain. This was a headline we could have on magazines, for example. Yeah. So there was this notion that uncertainty is bad, even though it was there.
Yeah. I think the difficult part was, because a lot of things happen very, very quickly, and it has been affecting everyone. A lot of it in a negative way, of course. So. It was difficult for most people. Even for me, it was very difficult at that time. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of cultural change for the organization as well as your mindset. You need to be ready for it. It's difficult, but you need to be ready for it. And in a way, it's exciting. You be on your toes the whole time, and it pushes you to learn.
You're saying it in a very cheeky way, So, does anyone have a question for our panel? I'm not sure what it is that we're hearing.
It's me. I'm bending forward to grab water and.
Okay, so no question. Apparently, you've given all the answers that were needed. So let's wrap this up with one question from me, actually. And for me, I'll take it. What are the tips that you would share with us on how to manage this and to think about planning from now on in a way that is better after this experience? What advice would you share?
Okay, I can.
Let's start. You give one each. Let's do it that way.
Okay. So. Well, nowadays, people already know that digital is key, but now it's like bread and butter of marketing. But I think when you excel in that, it's important, of course, but you have to marry that with the ability to understand consumers, with data, and the ability to understand the persona, etc. Marry that with analytics. Because you need to assess the performance and everything. And common sense is really, really important, because at the end of the day, this is how you're going to assess. It's definitely very important. It's not just about the tools. It's not just about the methodology that you're using. The second thing is, I think test and test and test. This is like, at least for me, it's crucial. And don't worry, you'll make mistakes along the way, but this is how you learn. And this is how
This is
you
a very
improve
startup
your-
mindset.
Well, we're at the end of the day, we need to have that entrepreneurial
Absolutely.
mindset. Yeah.
Okay. Sevgi?
Such a difficult question to find one thing to say, but basically my biggest fear, I mean, that I'm trying to avoid this to happen to me as a marketeer, losing the relevance. Because this, I'm reading a lot about virtual reality and trying to understand. We live in a physical world, right? And we think there are digital transformation happening. In 10, 15 years, I believe what Matrix will be our reality. So the world will change. And it sounds crazy, but if you look at that space, what is happening, as a marketeer, not adapting that change, that we will move, maybe digital or this reality will change and it will be digital world, and how you operate as a marketeer in this world. Because 10 years, 15 years ago, if someone told me this, I would say, oh, that's so funny or so unrealistic. What is happening today? And what I am saying this today in 10 years' time will be most probably our reality, the way we need to operate as a marketeer. And how you become relevant when everything changes fundamentally, that's the challenge for us, right, professionally. And how you can overcome, or how you can be prepared. You can overcome but be prepared. Really live in the future. Because if you don't live in the future, you will be definitely irrelevant as a human being, but also as a marketeer. And how you do this, I don't know. If someone finds it, just let me know. But it's really living in this future is the tip.
There's this YouTuber that I follow who did a series, you maybe saw it. She's basically filming herself, talking to herself from three months before, once the pandemic started. So it's every time a loop like this, like, this is me from the future telling you. And it's, that like it gets worse every time. Dewald.
I really love what both of you said. I like the idea of common sense, by the way. That's such a, I think it's a principle that just left a lot of people's minds during the pandemic. But you said one thing, that's tough. You're right, it's tough because I have like 7. But if I can choose one, because I can't add much to what you eloquently said, is maybe to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I would almost say seek out the discomfort. And that's maybe what happened, is we were just comfortable before this happens. So, you know, if I can tag on to what they said, that'll be my one thing. Just seek out the discomfort and then get comfortable there. And then I think we'll, in my opinion, my humble opinion, we'll handle it better in future.
Interesting. So is it a way to say that we've been spoiled to
Possibly.
be too comfortable, and you know what, grow up, understand that the world is not this safe place?
Possibly, and I think my personal opinion is do this in your whole life, not only at work, but in your personal life as well. Learn something new.
Sailing.
Yeah, I only read about it. I'm not sailing, but I learned a few new things. Maybe I'll start sailing now.
We will all.
And in the office, cultivate that, you know, that uncomfortable space is good. Live there, and then you know, when the next crisis hits,
You'd be ready.
You'll be ready.
Do you think that you were ready when it hit this one?
I want to meet the person that was ready. Things like a good corporate culture and some of the stuff that you guys mentioned, common sense, logic, within those spaces, yes, 100% we were ready. We were ready for a global pandemic that stopped everything.
Obviously, nobody could have predicted that it could happen, but being ready to turn on a dime, to adjust.
I think we were very, very lucky to be. I think there were a few that weren't, but we came out really strong. And individually, within the company, I think folks come out really, really strong. So we feel positive about how we handled it and how we handled the first few days of it, which was the roughest part. But I don't think there should be anybody arrogant enough to go that they were just 100% ready.
I don't know. Did we have anybody who was 100% ready? I think so. Yes, Miss.
I have a question. So you guys talked a lot about the importance of data, and in the context of planning or not to plan. But my question was, in big companies like the one I work for, there is a lot of data. We capture a lot of data. We just don't have a particular strategy to go about that data. So in a world where we have so much data capture, is it not important to plan for your data strategy? Micro is very important, but I would like to hear also from you guys, do you have a particular data strategy? Not just how to capture it, but how to make sense of it and what to get out of it?
Such a smart question. 100% fully agree with you. I mean, somebody might disagree with me here, but yeah, I've also been in corporate life in a different country, in a different life, where data flies at you from all directions, and a year later, it's somewhere on a shelf. Nobody did anything with it. So we are extremely particular about how we handle the data. Data also costs money, and now with tech, getting data even faster, we talk about this agility to adapt to that. So 100%, you've got to have a strategy for your data, and I think not be lazy to not use it. You paid for it. So even if it came for free, even if you don't want to use the data, at least have the discipline to go through the data, discuss the data, and sometimes common sense tells you, I love that word, I'm going to use it 20 times, that something is off and you can choose to park it. But at least have that discipline. So we absolutely fundamentally plan not only for the data to come, but how we're going to mine it, where we're going to get it from, and the answers we're looking for.
Because data is not new. For as long as I have been working in marketing, there's been data collection. It's just how we use it, or the amount of data that we now collect, which is much bigger.
Correct.
Yeah, I can relate to what you're saying, and I think Sevgi, moving from the very big company background and now OSN, more agile structure, you might be able to tell more. But yes, I mean, having a lot of data, it is good and also challenging in a way. And I think what a lot of companies doing now, as part of their digital transformation, they're also looking at ways to and people who will be able to help to understand and process the data in a much more efficient way. And when I talk about the data, it's a combination of things, right? There's your first-party data, which is related to your consumers' database, but there's also the other data that you get, like from Facebook, from your digital paid digital advertisements, for example. All of these, I mean, again, I cannot talk on behalf of everyone, but a lot of the companies might not even have this data talking to each other. How do you make that work? How do you know that the results that you get is based on the ABCD from the different channels that you have invested in? What will be your return on investment on it? So it is very difficult, but I would have to say it is a matter of the whole structural change, and at the same time, us as marketeer, we have to be friends with the data scientists in the company. And
they're the kings now.
Yes, and keep on processing and using it, because at the beginning you'll find that there will be a lot of discrepancies, but this is how you learn. I mean, unfortunately, it's not a straightforward answer.
No, data is a huge topic. Unfortunately, not for us to discuss now because we are running out of time. But maybe, hopefully, we can do another conversation around this soon. Guys, thank you so much. Wulan, Sevgi, Dewald, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to our audience for coming to meet with us in person. And hopefully, we'll meet again soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.